My name is Samantha Wilson, and at 32, I was the operations director of Wilson Family Furniture until last month. I was standing in the middle of the Chicago Furniture Expo when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my father. "Your disloyalty is unacceptable. You're out of the family business." 10 years of 70-hour weeks, an MBA specifically for this role, all erased in a 15-second message. My reply? Just one word: understood. What my parents didn't expect was what happened next. Before I tell you what happened after those 72 missed calls, take a second to subscribe if you want to hear how I turned this betrayal into my biggest success. Round and setup. Growing up as a Wilson meant I was practically raised on showroom floors. My earliest memories involve hiding under dining tables while my father Thomas charmed customers with stories about wood grains and craftsmanship. Wilson Family Furniture had been established in 1978, just 3 years before I was born, and had grown from a single storefront to 6 showrooms across 3 states by the time I was in high school. While other kids spent weekends at the mall, I spent mine dusting display models and eventually helping customers as I got older. By 16, I could identify every wood type, fabric grade, and furniture style in our inventory. My mother, Catherine, ran the financial side with precision and caution, scrutinizing every expense report and invoice like they contained hidden codes. "This business is in your blood, Sammy," my father would tell me. "Someday all this will be yours and Ryan's responsibility." Ryan is my younger brother by 4 years. While I was meticulously learning every aspect of the business, Ryan was the charming, carefree Wilson. He had our father's easy charisma, but none of his work ethic. Still, customers loved him, and my parents doted on him. I took my future role seriously. After graduating high school with honors, I attended Northwestern for my business degree, working weekends and summers at the main showroom. My senior thesis analyzed furniture industry transitions in the digital age. My parents proudly displayed my diploma in the main office, but never implemented any of my suggestions from that paper. After college, I immediately pursued an MBA with a focus on retail operations and supply chain management. My entire education was tailored to bringing Wilson Family Furniture into the modern era. Meanwhile, Ryan barely finished his marketing degree at a state college, yet returned to a newly created marketing director position complete with corner office and company car. I started in sales after completing my MBA, insisting on working through every department before taking on any executive role. Over 6 years, I moved from sales to purchasing, inventory management, and finally to operations. By the time I was 28, I had earned the operations director position through demonstrable improvements in every department I touched. Our $20 million annual revenue was impressive for a family business, but growth had stalled over the past 3 years. While our competitors embraced online sales and virtual showroom experiences, Wilson Furniture remained stubbornly traditional under my parents' leadership. "Furniture isn't like books or clothes," my father would insist during management meetings. "People need to sit on a sofa, feel the fabric, and test the cushions before spending thousands." I had compiled research showing that consumer behavior was changing rapidly. Nearly 40% of furniture purchases under $2,000 were happening online, and that percentage was climbing yearly. I'd prepared a comprehensive proposal for an e-commerce expansion complete with virtual showroom technology that would allow customers to visualize pieces in their actual homes. This would cost hundreds of thousands to implement. My mother objected, tapping her pen against the spreadsheet I'd presented. "The return is speculative at best. Not to mention diluting our brand," Ryan added, though he'd been texting under the table for most of my presentation. "Our customers expect the white glove showroom experience." I had counters for both arguments. The investment would be recouped within 18 months based on projected sales increases, and our customer surveys showed increasing demand for online options, especially among younger buyers who would be our core demographic within 5 years. But my arguments fell on deaf ears. After the meeting, my father patted my shoulder and said, "We appreciate your forward thinking, Sammy, but Wilson Furniture didn't get this far by chasing trends. We know our customers." Despite the official rejection, I couldn't let the idea go. I believed too strongly in the data. So I made a decision that would eventually lead to that fateful voicemail. I quietly allocated resources from my operations budget to develop a small pilot project. Nothing that would be customer-facing yet. Just a proof of concept with a limited selection of our inventory digitized for online browsing and a rudimentary version of the visualization tool. I justified it to myself as a necessary risk. If it failed, I'd absorb the cost and my parents would never need to know. If it succeeded, the results would speak for themselves. I had no idea that this small act of defiance would eventually cost me my place in both the family business and, for a time, the family itself. 3 months into my secret project, the preliminary results exceeded even my optimistic projections. We had created a password-protected microsite featuring about 20% of our inventory with 3D models and basic room visualization tools. I'd given access to a select group of our most loyal customers, explaining it was a beta test for potential future offerings. The response was incredible. With minimal marketing, we saw a 15% conversion rate on items viewed, nearly triple the industry standard. Customer feedback was glowing, with particular praise for the ability to see furniture in their actual spaces using just a smartphone camera. "This changes everything about buying furniture," wrote one longtime customer who purchased an $8,000 sectional without ever visiting a showroom. The validation came at a perfect time. We were hosting a dinner for key clients, including James Henderson of Henderson Hotels, a chain that regularly ordered furniture for their boutique properties. During the meal, Henderson casually mentioned how impressed he was with our new online catalog. "It made selecting pieces for our Denver renovation so much easier," he said, raising his glass in my direction. "Samantha showed me the beta version last month, and we've already placed 3 orders through it." My father's smile remained fixed, but I saw his eyes dart to me with confusion and something harder. My mother's hand tightened around her fork. "We're always looking for ways to better serve our valued partners." My father recovered smoothly. "Samantha has been spearheading some digital initiatives." Later that night, after the guests had left, both my parents called me into my father's office. "What exactly did Henderson mean about an online catalog?" my mother demanded. I explained the pilot project, emphasizing the positive results and minimal investment required from existing resources. As I detailed the conversion rates and customer feedback, I could see my father's expression gradually shifting from anger to consideration. "You should have brought this to us first," he said finally. But I can't argue with Henderson's enthusiasm. He's our biggest hospitality client. My mother was less impressed. "You reallocated operational resources without authorization. In any other company, that would be grounds for termination. In any other company, the COO wouldn't have to go behind management's back to implement proven industry standards," I countered, immediately regretting my tone. The conversation ended with cautious approval to continue the pilot, but with oversight from Ryan's marketing department. It wasn't ideal, but it was progress. The following week, I scheduled a boardroom meeting to present the comprehensive data from the pilot. Our advisory board members would be present, and I hoped their outside perspective would help convince my parents that this wasn't just a trend, but a necessary evolution. I spent days preparing, gathering testimonials, analyzing metrics, and creating projections based on actual results rather than industry averages. The morning of the presentation, I arrived early to set up, feeling confident that the numbers would speak for themselves. As board members and executives filed in, Ryan slid into the seat beside me. "Impressive work, sis," he said, glancing at my presentation notes. "But you might want to adjust your cost projections. I've been looking into what full implementation would actually require." Before I could respond, my father called the meeting to order. My presentation went smoothly until I reached the financial projections slide. Several board members were nodding along, clearly impressed by the return on investment numbers. Then Ryan raised his hand. I think we should address some discrepancies in the financial projections. He proceeded to present an alternative analysis showing implementation costs nearly double what I had projected and a significantly longer timeline to profitability. His numbers made no sense given the data I'd gathered, but he spoke with such confidence that I saw doubt creeping into the board members' expressions. After the meeting, I cornered Ryan in his office. What was that? Those numbers were completely fabricated. Ryan leaned back in his chair, looking more like our father than I'd ever noticed before. They weren't fabricated, they were adjusted for reality. Your little side project was cute, but scaling it would be much more complex. I've done the research. I've built the proof of concept. My numbers are accurate. Your numbers reflect what you want to see. He shrugged. Look, Sammy, Mom and Dad will never fully get behind this digital push. They're too old school. I'm trying to save you from wasting more time. I didn't believe him for a second. When he stepped out for lunch, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked his email. There it was. An exchange between Ryan and our mother from the previous evening. They had deliberately altered the financial projections to make my initiative look unprofitable. We need to slow this down, Catherine had written. Thomas is getting too excited about these online possibilities. Samantha's presentation needs to be countered with some financial reality. I felt physically ill reading their correspondence. They weren't just rejecting my ideas, they were actively sabotaging them. And worse, they were manipulating our father, who, despite his traditional approach, had shown genuine interest in the potential. That night, I made the decision to go directly to our advisory board with the unaltered data. It was a risky move that would undoubtedly be seen as circumventing the family leadership, but I believed the future of the company was at stake. Wilson Furniture needed to evolve. And if my mother and brother couldn't see that, perhaps the objective voices on our board would make them listen. I had no idea that this decision would accelerate the conflict to a breaking point. The advisory board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I spent the intervening days gathering additional testimonials, refining my financial data, and preparing responses to potential objections. I also took the precaution of sending my complete presentation to 2 board members I trusted, ensuring they would have the accurate information regardless of what happened in the meeting. David Chin, our longest-serving board member and a former furniture industry executive himself, had always been supportive of my contributions. He sent me an encouraging email after reviewing my materials. This is exactly the direction Wilson Furniture needs to move. I'll make sure your voice is heard. The morning of the meeting, I dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy suit that projected confidence without being flashy. I arrived 30 minutes early to set up and check that all my presentation materials were in order. Board members arrived along with our executive team. My parents entered last, my father giving me a questioning look while my mother's expression remained carefully neutral. Ryan slipped in moments before the meeting was called to order, taking a seat directly across from me. The first portion of the meeting covered standard business, quarterly results, inventory challenges, and a brief discussion of upcoming industry events. Then David introduced my presentation. Next, Samantha will share some exciting digital initiatives that have shown remarkable preliminary results. I stood and moved to the front of the room, connecting my laptop to the projector. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. As many of you know, consumer behavior in furniture purchasing has been evolving rapidly. I was 10 minutes into my presentation, just reaching the impressive conversion metrics from our pilot, when my father interrupted. Samantha, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we should probably move on to the next agenda item. The board's time is valuable. I paused, confused. I'm just getting to the core findings. I think the board will find the customer response data particularly relevant. That won't be necessary. My father continued, now standing. We've already made decisions regarding our digital strategy moving forward. The room fell silent as my father moved to stand beside me, effectively taking control of the presentation. Wilson Furniture will indeed be expanding our online presence, but with a more comprehensive approach than what's been tested. Ryan will be heading our new online division, working with external technology partners who specialize in furniture retail. I felt as though the floor had dropped out from under me. Ryan looked smugly satisfied, while my mother nodded approvingly. Most of the board members seemed surprised, but not uncomfortable with the announcement. In fact, my father continued. Ryan has already identified the perfect implementation partner. Amanda Byrne from ByteStyle Technologies will be joining us next week to outline the rollout plan. Amanda Byrne. The name registered immediately. Ryan had been dating Amanda for about 6 months. I'd met her twice at family dinners, but had no idea she ran a tech company, let alone one with experience in furniture retail. ByteStyle has no furniture industry experience, I said, struggling to maintain my professional tone. And their proposed solution will cost us nearly double what we could achieve with in-house development and selected contractors. My father's expression hardened. The financial details have been thoroughly reviewed by your mother and our finance team. ByteStyle offers the comprehensive solution we need. May I ask how ByteStyle was selected? David Chen interjected. Was there a competitive bidding process? My father shifted uncomfortably. We evaluated several options and determined ByteStyle was the best fit for our needs. Without involving your operations director? David pressed. This falls under marketing and digital strategy. Ryan jumped in. My department. I couldn't remain silent. The board should be aware that Amanda Byrne is Ryan's girlfriend, and the contract terms are significantly above market rate for comparable services. The room grew tense. Several board members exchanged glances, while others suddenly became very interested in their meeting materials. No one spoke for several uncomfortable seconds. Samantha, my mother finally said. Her voice cold, that's an inappropriate accusation. Amanda's relationship with Ryan has nothing to do with her company's qualifications. I pulled up the financial analysis I'd prepared. ByteStyle's proposal is $420,000 for Phase 1 implementation. The industry average for similar work is $250,000 to $300,000. I've gathered quotes from 3 established providers with furniture retail experience, all under $275,000. Those other providers don't offer the customization we require, Ryan countered. The customization described in ByteStyle's proposal is actually standard in modern e-commerce platforms, I replied, my voice steady despite my rising anger. I looked around the room, searching for allies among the board members. Most avoided my gaze. Even David seemed reluctant to challenge my father further. I think we've heard enough, my father said firmly. This decision is final. We're still a family business, and the family has decided on this direction. The meeting moved on to other topics, but I barely heard anything else discussed. My presentation materials sat unused on the table, the culmination of months of work dismissed without consideration. As soon as the meeting concluded, I gathered my things and left without speaking to anyone. 2 days later, I flew to Chicago for the annual Furniture Expo, partly for scheduled meetings with suppliers, but mostly to clear my head and consider my next steps. The first day of the expo went smoothly. I maintained my professional demeanor through meetings with vendors and industry colleagues, giving no indication of the turmoil within our company. That evening, alone in my hotel room, I received the voicemail that would change everything. Samantha, this is your father. His voice was tight with anger. Your behavior at the board meeting was completely unacceptable. Questioning family decisions in front of the board, making accusations about Ryan and Amanda. This isn't how we raised you to conduct business. Your disloyalty is unacceptable. You're out of the family business. Ryan will assume your responsibilities effective immediately. We'll discuss transition details when you return. I listened to the message twice, my hands shaking. 10 years of dedication, of working harder than anyone else, of sacrificing my personal life for the company, all dismissed in a 30-second voicemail. After several minutes of stunned silence, I picked up my phone and texted a single word in response. Understood. I maintained my composure through the remainder of the expo, somehow navigating scheduled meetings with suppliers and industry contacts without betraying the earthquake that had just shattered my professional life. I nodded at appropriate intervals, discussed price points and delivery timelines, and even negotiated favorable terms with 2 new suppliers. No one would have guessed that inside, I was completely numb. It wasn't until I returned to my hotel room on the final evening that the full weight of what had happened crashed down on me. I closed the door, kicked off my heels, and sank to the floor, my back against the bed. The tears came without warning, years of suppressed frustration and hurt pouring out in heaving sobs that left me gasping for breath. Between bouts of crying came flashes of white-hot anger. I paced the room, ranting aloud to the empty space about the injustice, the betrayal, the sheer stupidity of their decision. Then came another wave of grief, not just for my job, but for the family relationship that now seemed irreparably damaged. As the emotional storm gradually subsided, I found myself staring at the ceiling, methodically cataloging every sacrifice I'd made for Wilson Family Furniture. There was Mark, my college boyfriend who proposed during our senior year. I'd broken things off because he wanted to move to Seattle for a tech job, and I was committed to returning home for the business. The business is my future, I'd told him. I can't just walk away from my family legacy. Then came the opportunity to join a furniture design startup in New York after my MBA. The salary was less than what Wilson offered, but the equity could have been valuable and the creative environment had excited me. I declined without real consideration because the family needed me, most painfully. There were the 10 years of 70-hour work weeks, the canceled vacations when inventory issues arose, the countless family gatherings where I'd worked on my laptop while others enjoyed themselves, the friends who eventually stopped inviting me places because I always prioritized work emergencies. All that dedication, and in the end, I was discarded with a voicemail. My phone, which I'd silenced after my father's message, was now overflowing with notifications. 25 missed calls from my mother. 17 from Ryan. Numerous messages from colleagues who must have heard something was happening but didn't know the details. I listened to a few voicemails, tracking the evolution of my family's reaction to my silence. My mother's first message was coldly professional. Your father acted hastily. Call me so we can discuss this like adults. By her 8th message, her tone had shifted to concerned annoyance. This silent treatment is childish, Samantha. We have a business to run. Her latest message held a note of worry beneath the frustration. We haven't heard from you in 24 hours. At least let us know you're all right. Ryan's messages ranged from faux sympathy, I know Dad was harsh, but he'll cool down, to thinly veiled threats. You're putting me in an impossible position here. Several colleagues had called with confused questions about project status and reporting structures. Then came an email from my mother with the subject line, Terms for Discussion. Samantha, your father spoke hastily. We all agree that your contributions to Wilson Furniture are valuable, though your recent behavior has been concerning. Come home, and we'll discuss acceptable terms for your return to the company. This situation can be resolved if you're willing to be reasonable. Reading between the lines wasn't difficult. Acceptable terms and be reasonable clearly meant accepting Ryan's new authority and Amanda's company taking over my project. I would be expected to apologize and fall in line. A text from Ryan arrived next. Hey sis, I'm caught in the middle here trying to help. Dad's calmed down some. If you apologize for the Amanda accusations, I think we can work something out. Maybe you could lead implementation once we get Amanda's platform? Let me know if I can help smooth things over. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The audacity of his offer to let me implement someone else's inferior solution after stealing my entire project was breathtaking. The final blow came in the form of a company-wide email that had been forwarded to me by David Chen. The subject was leadership announcement. Wilson Furniture is pleased to announce that Ryan Wilson has been appointed Chief Operations Officer, overseeing all operational aspects of the business, in addition to his marketing responsibilities. Ryan's expanded role reflects the company's commitment to streamlined leadership and innovative thinking as we move into the digital age. Attached was a smiling photo of Ryan in front of our flagship store, looking every inch the executive despite having none of the qualifications for the role he'd just been handed. David's personal note read simply, "This isn't right. Call me when you're ready to talk." After reading everything, I made a decision that surprised even me. I would maintain complete silence. No responses, no explanations, no negotiations. I needed time to process what had happened and plan my next move without the emotional manipulation that would inevitably come with engaging with my family. Instead, I called Professor Jameson, my favorite business school mentor who had always warned me about the pitfalls of family businesses. Sentiment and commerce are dangerous partners, she used to say. She answered on the second ring, and I poured out the whole story. "Samantha," she said when I finally paused for breath, "I'm sorry this happened, but I can't say I'm surprised. You've been the backbone of that company while they've taken you for granted. The question is, what will you do now?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to fight. To force them to see what they're throwing away. Another part just wants to walk away completely." "Those aren't your only options," she replied. "Sometimes the best response to being pushed out a door is to build your own house. You have the skills, the industry knowledge, and now you have the freedom. What would Wilson Furniture look like if it were actually yours?" That question lingered in my mind long after we hung up. For the first time since receiving my father's voicemail, I felt something beyond hurt and anger. I felt a glimmer of possibility. As I packed my suitcase to return home, I made another decision. I would take control of my narrative. No more being the dutiful daughter waiting for approval that would never come. No more working to build someone else's dream at the expense of my own. Whatever came next would be on my terms. Little did my family know that their voicemail wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The day after returning from Chicago, I met Allison Parker for coffee. Allison had been a client at Wilson Furniture before taking a position as merchandising director for a national furniture chain. More importantly, she was someone I trusted who understood the industry intimately. "They did what?" Allison nearly spilled her latte when I told her about the voicemail and subsequent events. "That's beyond unprofessional. It's corporate suicide. You've been running that place for years while they played at being executives." "I appreciate the outrage on my behalf," I said. "But I need to think strategically now. I've got savings to last about 6 months and a non-compete that's actually quite narrow since my parents never expected me to leave." Allison studied me for a moment. "You're not thinking of starting your own furniture retail business, are you? Because competing directly with your family would be messy," I finished for her. "No, I'm not looking to create Wilson Furniture 2.0. But there's a significant gap in the market that Wilson was never interested in filling." Over the next 2 hours, we analyzed the furniture landscape, identifying an underserved niche, sustainable, modular furniture with comprehensive virtual planning tools. The major players were either too traditional or too budget-focused to properly serve customers who wanted high-quality, environmentally responsible pieces that could adapt to changing living situations. "The subscription economy has touched almost every industry except furniture," I explained, warming to the concept. "People rent homes longer, move more frequently, and care more about sustainability. Yet they're still expected to buy furniture as if they'll keep it for 30 years. By the time we ordered a second round of coffee, the outline of modular home was taking shape. Not just furniture retail, but a new approach to home furnishing that combined quality craftsmanship with flexibility and technology. You'll need suppliers, Allison pointed out. Quality manufacturers who can deliver on sustainability claims and modular design. That afternoon, I contacted 3 former suppliers who had been dropped by Wilson Furniture during cost-cutting measures. All 3 had shifted toward more sustainable practices in recent years, making them perfect partners for my concept. 2 responded with immediate interest, and 1 even offered favorable terms based on our previous working relationship. Over the next week, I developed a comprehensive business plan, working 16-hour days fueled by a mixture of determination and righteous anger. The concept expanded to include a subscription option for customers who wanted the flexibility to exchange pieces as their needs changed, creating recurring revenue and stronger customer relationships. I also reached out to James Henderson at Henderson Hotels, who had been so impressed by my online catalog prototype. Our conversation was initially awkward, as he'd heard rumors about my departure, but not the details. I was disappointed to get an email from Ryan about taking over your online initiative. He admitted, "The prototype you showed me was exactly what we need for our designers. The platform he's describing sounds much more generic." I carefully avoided disparaging my family's business while making it clear that I was developing something that would better serve Henderson's needs. By the end of our call, James had committed to reviewing my new business concept as soon as it was ready and potentially serving as a launch client. It was time to formally sever ties with Wilson Furniture. I drafted a brief, professional resignation email. Please accept this email as formal notice of my resignation from Wilson Family Furniture, effective immediately. I will make myself available via email for any transition questions regarding current operations through the end of the month. I request that my final compensation, including accrued vacation time, be sent to my home address. I wish the company continued success. I deliberately avoided emotional language or explanations. My absence had already spoken volumes. This was simply making it official. That night, I visited the office to collect my personal belongings, timing my arrival for 9 p.m. when I knew everyone would be gone. Using my still-active key card, I entered the quiet building and headed straight for my office. I had just finished boxing up my awards, photos, and reference materials when a voice from the doorway startled me. "I thought you might come by after hours." David Chin stood leaning against the doorframe, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Just collecting my things," I said, continuing to pack. "I sent my resignation email earlier." David stepped into the office. "Your father showed it to the board this afternoon." He played it off as if you'd been considering leaving for some time, and the voicemail was just bad timing. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Of course he did. Anything to save face. For what it's worth, not everyone bought that version of events. 2 board members specifically objected to how your removal was handled. I paused my packing, but not enough to actually do anything about it. David sighed. "The board serves at the pleasure of the majority shareholders, which means your parents. But several of us are concerned about the company's direction. Ryan is not prepared for the role he's been given, and this bite-style contract has red flags all over it." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, though I felt a pang of sadness for the company I'd dedicated so much of my life to. "What will you do now?" David asked. I considered how much to share and decided that David had earned my trust. I outlined the modular home concept, watching as his expression shifted from polite interest to genuine enthusiasm. "That's actually brilliant," he said when I finished. "It addresses several market gaps simultaneously and leverages your strengths. Would you be open to outside investment?" 2 days later, I had secured an initial $250,000 investment from a former colleague of David's who specialized in retail startups. It wasn't enough for a full launch, but it would cover development of the platform and initial product designs. I leased a small warehouse space in an industrial district just outside the city, intentionally choosing a location I wouldn't randomly encounter family members. The space was mostly concrete and steel beams, with a small office area that smelled perpetually of the previous tenant's coffee obsession, but the rent was reasonable and it had good natural light for product photography. My first hire was Jack Morris, Wilson Furniture's former IT director who had quit in frustration after 3 consecutive years of having his digital initiatives rejected. Jack brought technical expertise and intimate knowledge of furniture retail systems, plus the same drive to prove something to those who had undervalued his contributions. "When you called, I almost didn't pick up," Jack admitted on his first day. "Seeing Wilson on my caller ID brought back some not great memories, but I'm glad I did. This concept is what I've been trying to sell for years." As we worked to build modular home from the ground up, I established a new routine. Each morning began with an hour at the gym before work, lifting weights until my muscles burned. There was something therapeutic about the physical exertion, about making myself stronger in tangible ways while building something new from nothing. With each rep, each small business milestone, I felt myself becoming someone new, someone who wouldn't be defined by her family's rejection, but by what she created in its wake. It had been exactly 48 hours since I'd sent my resignation email, and my phone showed 72 missed calls from various Wilson numbers. I silenced it again and returned to work. They'd had 10 years of my attention. Now it was time to focus on my own vision. After 72 hours of complete silence, I received a text message from my mother that was impossible to ignore. "Family dinner. Tonight, 7 p.m. Not optional if you ever want to resolve the situation." I considered not going. I had no legal obligation to my family anymore, and my resignation was already submitted. But something in me needed closure, needed to say to their faces what I hadn't been able to articulate before. I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time, parking behind Ryan's ostentatious sports car in the circular driveway. The family home was a sprawling colonial where we'd gathered for countless Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations. Tonight, it felt like entering enemy territory. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her expression a careful mask of parental concern that didn't reach her eyes. "You've had everyone worried sick," she said by way of greeting. My father and Ryan were waiting in the formal dining room, seated at opposite ends of the table that could accommodate 12, but was set for only 4 tonight. The tension was thick enough to cut with the butter knife beside my plate. "Sit down, Samantha," my father said, his voice carefully controlled. "We have a lot to discuss." I took my seat across from Ryan, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. The table was set with the good china, as if this were a normal family dinner and not whatever intervention this was clearly meant to be. "I've resigned," I said simply. "There's not much to discuss. Don't be dramatic." My mother replied, serving roast chicken as if we were just having a typical family squabble. "Everyone says things they don't mean when they're upset." I meant every word of my resignation letter. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have discussed the situation, and we're prepared to offer you a way forward. You can return to the company with some adjustments to your role. You'll report to Ryan for the online division development, providing your operational expertise while he handles the strategic direction." The audacity was breathtaking. I had to suppress a laugh. "Let me be clear," I said, setting down my fork without taking a bite. "I'm not coming back to implement Ryan's watered-down version of my initiative while reporting to someone with a fraction of my experience and qualifications. You're being unreasonable." My mother snapped. "This business is your legacy too. You can't just walk away because you didn't get your way on one project." "This isn't about one project," I replied. "This is about 10 years of having my contributions minimized, my expertise questioned, and now my position eliminated via voicemail. And for what? So Ryan can give his girlfriend's company an inflated contract." At this, Ryan finally erupted. "That's not fair. Amanda's company is struggling with the implementation already. The platform doesn't integrate with our inventory system, the visualization tool keeps crashing, and they've already asked for additional funding to fix issues that weren't in the original scope. My mother shot him a warning look, but it was too late. I raised an eyebrow, unsurprised but still satisfied to hear my predictions coming true so quickly. Is that why Henderson Hotels canceled their contract with you? I asked innocently. My father's head snapped up. How do you know about that? James Henderson called me directly. They were supposed to be the first major client for your new online platform, weren't they? A $1.2 million contract over 3 years. The blood drained from my father's face. You poached our client? After everything we've done for you. I didn't poach anyone, I replied calmly. Henderson reached out to me when the demo of your new platform failed to meet their needs. Apparently, it lacked most of the features I had shown them in my prototype. I pulled out my phone and displayed the email from Henderson that I had received that morning. Feel free to read it yourself. They specifically cite technology limitations and inability to meet promised functionality as their reasons for cancellation. My name isn't mentioned once. My mother grabbed the phone and scanned the email, her face growing increasingly tense. She passed it to my father without comment. After reading it, he put the phone down carefully, as if it might explode. This is a significant setback. It's a disaster, Ryan muttered. Henderson was going to be our proof of concept for other hotel chains. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother was the first to break it, her voice taking on the conciliatory tone she used when negotiating with difficult suppliers. Perhaps we've been hasty. If the bite-style solution isn't working, we could reconsider your original implementation plan. We could terminate Amanda's company's contract and give you full control of the online division. I studied her face, seeing not maternal concern, but the calculating expression of a business owner trying to salvage a deteriorating situation. This wasn't about reconciliation, it was about damage control. No, I said simply. What do you mean, no? My father demanded. We're offering you exactly what you wanted. What I wanted was for you to trust my judgment and expertise 3 months ago. What I wanted was to be valued for my contributions rather than dismissed and replaced by my less qualified brother. What you're offering now isn't recognition of my worth. It's panic because your alternative is failing. The truth of my words hung in the air between us. Ryan stared at his plate, shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't ask for this, he said quietly. I told them you were better suited for operations. I'm drowning trying to handle both departments. Yet you didn't hesitate to take my job or to undermine my presentation to the board. I pointed out. He had the grace to look ashamed. I got caught up in what they wanted me to be. I'm sorry, Sammy. My mother made one final attempt. What will it take then? A board position? Higher compensation? We can be flexible. In that moment, I had perfect clarity. I didn't leave because you wouldn't use my ideas. I left because you never valued me. You saw me as a tool for the business, not as someone with vision and expertise worth respecting. No title or salary can fix that fundamental problem. My father started to object, but I held up my hand. I've started my own company. Modular Home will launch in 3 months with a completely different approach to furniture retail. I'm not competing directly with Wilson Furniture, but I will be pursuing clients like Henderson Hotels who need what I'm offering. The shock on their faces was almost comical. They had been so certain I would eventually fall in line that they hadn't considered I might create something of my own. As I stood to leave, my mother followed me to the door while my father remained at the table, looking suddenly older than his years. This will break your father's heart, she said, her voice lower now that we were alone. He always saw you as the future of the company. No, I replied. He saw me as the caretaker of his company, not its leader. There's a difference. She sighed, dropping the manipulation tactic when she saw it wasn't working. I pushed for Ryan, she admitted. I knew you were more qualified. But I thought he needed the position more than you did. You were always so capable, so independent. He needed the validation. The admission stunned me. After years of fighting to prove myself, My mother was finally acknowledging what I had known all along. "That's a terrible way to run a business," I said. "And an even worse way to treat your children." I left without another word, feeling lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened next with my family, I had spoken my truth. I had stood my ground. And, for the first time, I was truly free to build something that reflected my own vision, not someone else's. 9 months later, I stood in the center of the modular home showroom on opening day, watching as customers explored our displays with genuine curiosity and excitement. The space looked nothing like traditional furniture stores with their crowded arrangements of matching sets. Instead, we had created lifestyle vignettes that demonstrated the adaptability of our pieces, with touchscreen displays that allowed visitors to visualize different configurations and materials. Where Wilson Furniture had operated on my parents' rigid hierarchy, Modular Home embraced collaboration. My team of 12 included 3 former Wilson employees who had been underutilized there, including Jack Morris, who now led our technology development. Each brought unique perspectives that had shaped our business model in ways I couldn't have achieved alone. "The Henderson Hotel installation looks amazing," said Megan, our client relations director, approaching with a tablet displaying photos of our first major commercial project. "James just sent these over. They're already getting comments from guests about the furniture." The Henderson Hotel's partnership had been a major victory. After their disappointing experience with Wilson's failed online platform, James had been eager to work with a company that could actually deliver on technological promises. Our modular furniture now featured in their Chicago boutique hotel, with plans to expand to 3 more locations by year-end. "Send these to the design team," I replied. "They should see how their work looks in the actual space." As Megan walked away, I noticed a familiar figure entering the showroom. My mother stood hesitantly by the entrance, taking in the bustling activity around her. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than the Catherine Wilson who had ruled the family business with spreadsheets and stern expectations. "Impressive," she said as I approached. "Very different from what I expected." "Thank you," I replied, unsure of her purpose in coming. We hadn't spoken since the family dinner confrontation, though I'd heard updates about Wilson Furniture through industry contacts. She wandered through the showroom, examining our signature sectional that could be reconfigured into separate seating pieces or combined into a bed for guests. "The craftsmanship is excellent," she noted, running her hand along the sustainable bamboo frame. "Hanson Woodworks is our primary manufacturer," I explained. "They were a Wilson supplier until the cost-cutting 3 years ago." "I remember," she said. "Thomas was convinced we could find cheaper alternatives without sacrificing quality." "And did you?" A small smile. "No. But admitting mistakes has never been your father's strength." We toured the rest of the showroom, including the technology center where customers could use our virtual design tools. My mother seemed genuinely impressed by the platform's intuitive interface and realistic rendering. "This is what you were trying to build for us," she said. It wasn't a question. "A version of it," I acknowledged. "This has evolved significantly based on what we've learned from customers." As we reached my office, she finally asked the question that had likely prompted her visit. "How are you doing financially?" These first years can be challenging for new businesses. I considered deflecting but decided on honesty. We did $2 million in our first 6 months, with projections to hit $6 million by year-end. Our subscription model is gaining traction faster than expected, and we've secured 2 rounds of funding from investors who believe in our approach. She nodded, absorbing the information. At Wilson Furniture's peak, they had done $20 million annually. At our current growth rate, we would match that within 3 years. "Your father has been calling some old industry contacts," she said carefully, "looking for collaboration opportunities in the digital space." The Byte-style contract was terminated. I heard. She met my eyes directly for the first time. "He's too proud to call you himself. But he's been following your progress." There's a copy of your feature and design quarterly on his desk. The magazine had done a spread on modular home last month, highlighting our sustainable materials and innovative business model. I hadn't sent it to my parents. What are you asking, Mom? Nothing specific, she replied. Just opening a door if you're interested in walking through it someday. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A recognition that I had built something valuable, something worth acknowledging. After she left, I returned to the showroom floor where a young couple was testing our modular dining set that expanded from an intimate two-person table to seating for 8. Their excitement as they discovered its features reminded me why I had created Modular Home in the first place, not just to prove something to my family, but to bring something new and valuable into the world. Later that week, Ryan called. Our conversation was awkward at first, filled with pauses and careful phrasing, but gradually became more natural. The operations role was too much, he admitted. I've gone back to focusing on marketing, and Dad hired someone external for operations. That sounds like a good decision, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Sales are down about 20% year over year, he continued. The Henderson loss hit us hard, and we've had trouble regaining momentum. Dad's been asking questions about your subscription model. He saw it mentioned in an industry newsletter. Is that why you're calling? For business intelligence. Ryan laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard from him in years. No, though he'd probably love it if I reported back with trade secrets. Actually, I'm calling because I need advice. We're stuck in this weird middle ground between traditional retail and e-commerce, and nothing's working well. The request for help surprised me. It was the first time Ryan had ever acknowledged my expertise without qualification or competition. I considered my response carefully. My success didn't require Wilson Furniture's failure. The market was large enough for both our approaches, and despite everything, I didn't want to see my family's legacy crumble. I can't share proprietary information about Modular Home, I said finally, but I'm willing to consult on general strategy questions. Maybe we can meet for coffee next week. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a step toward a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than competition or obligation. 3 days after speaking with Ryan, I received a brief email from my father. No greeting, just 3 sentences. Your showroom is impressive. Several customers have mentioned your visualization technology. Call if you want to discuss potential collaboration. Again, not an apology, but an acknowledgement. From Thomas Wilson, that was significant. I didn't respond immediately. Any collaboration would need to be approached carefully, with clear boundaries and expectations, but I didn't dismiss the possibility outright either. Instead, I focused on the business I was building. That afternoon, I met with Lily, a young designer who had joined our team with innovative ideas for modular office furniture that could transition between home and workplace use. Her concepts aligned perfectly with our philosophy of furniture that adapted to people's lives rather than forcing people to adapt to furniture. I love how you're approaching this, I told her after reviewing her sketches. The flexibility between configurations addresses exactly what remote workers are struggling with. Lily beamed at the praise. I suggested something similar at my previous job, but they weren't interested in product development from a junior designer. Well, here we value good ideas regardless of title or tenure. I replied, let's get the product team involved and see how we can move this forward. As Lily left my office, I reflected on how different Modular Home's culture was from Wilson Furniture's rigid hierarchy. The painful separation from my family business had forced me to define my own leadership style and values, creating something that would never have been possible within the constraints of my parents' company. Sometimes being pushed out of what you thought was your destined path opens the door to something far better than you could have imagined. The voicemail that had seemed so devastating had actually been the catalyst for building something truly mine, something that reflected my vision and values without compromise. I still had the voicemail saved on my phone, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as evidence of how a moment that feels like an ending can actually be the beginning of something better. The family business had never really been mine, no matter how hard I worked or how much I sacrificed. But Modular Home was entirely my creation, and its success was sweeter for having been built from nothing but determination and a clear vision. What about you? Have you ever had a door close that ultimately led to something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you found something valuable in my journey from rejection to reinvention, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and transformation. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember that sometimes the most painful endings create space for the most beautiful beginnings.